I'm Virginia Flores, and I'm from HUD's Office of Public Housing Management and Occupancy Division. I'm joined by Ron Ashford from HUD's Public Housing Supportive Services Office and by Ed Gramlich from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. We're here to talk about tenant participation funds today. TP funds were established in Section 964 of HUD's regs. PHAs must provide tenant participation funds to duly elected resident councils, and these funds must be used for eligible activities outlined in 964. Some of the things you could use tenant participation funds are for resident training or self-sufficiency activities. TP funds come from the Public Housing's operating fund, and they're $25 per year for each occupied unit. $15 of this goes directly to the resident council, and up to $10 of this can go to the PHA for administrative cost. The PHA may prorate this amount due to the recent operating fund reductions. When Congress allocates money for public housing, sometimes they do it at a lower funding rate than they had in previous years. So for example, a previous year's proration was 85%, and that means that a public housing resident council, instead of $15, would get $12.75 per occupied unit per year instead of the normal $15. But I'd also like to note that some PHAs have decided to allot up to $25 per year directly for the resident councils and don't take any money out for their own admin costs. This webcast will cover the content that we released in PIH Notice 2013-21. This notice replaces PIH Notice 2001-3, which was the last place where we issued any guidance on how to use tenant participation funds. Since it's been over a decade since we issued guidance, we've been getting a lot of questions from residents, PHAs, field offices on how and what are the best ways to use tenant participation funds. This new notice allows for a broader range of eligible activities. It also provides guidance for mixed income communities like Hope 6 developments. It outlines the roles of residents, PHAs, and HUD in administering TP funds. And it also provides examples of allowable and unallowable activities. And we also provide a list of questions that PHAs and residents and field offices can use as criteria for evaluating TP fund use. I'll turn it over to Ed now to talk about residents' roles in administering TP funds.
Thank you, Virginia. But before I get into the specific role of resident council when it comes to tenant participation funds, I would like to lay out some of the important language in Section 964 of the regulations that stresses the importance of resident participation in general and the importance of resident councils in particular. Regarding resident involvement in general, Section 964 states that, and this is a quote, residents shall be involved and participate in the overall policy development and direction of public housing operations. 964 goes on to say that residents shall be actively involved in decision-making processes and give advice on matters such as maintenance, security, modernization, resident screening and selection, and recreation. Now, getting into the resident councils in particular, as the slide shows, the role of a resident council is to improve the quality of life and resident satisfaction and to help residents participate in self-help initiatives to enable residents to create a positive living environment. Section 964 goes on to state that resident councils may actively participate through a working partnership with the PHA to advise and assist the PHA in all aspects of public housing operations. The regulations reinforce this by saying that the PHA shall ensure strong resident participation in all issues and facets of its operations through the duly elected resident councils, and that a PHA shall work in partnership with the duly elected resident councils. Now, turning to the tenant participation funds, the new notice that Virginia talked about, Notice 2013-21, states that resident councils play an active role in determining how tenant participation funds are used, and that each resident council has the ability to decide which activities it will pursue. As the slide shows, Notice 2013-21 lists some very basic, common sense accountability features that residents' councils receiving participation funds should undertake. For example, resident councils should enter into a written agreement with the PHA. Having a written agreement can help to minimize future disagreements. Resident councils should submit a budget to the PHA for the tenant participation fund uses that they have in mind. They should also ensure that the tenant participation fund uses are consistent with HUD and PHA rules. And the resident council should keep proper financial records for tenant participation funds. But what if you don't have a resident council? The notice 2013-21 says that if there isn't a resident council, the PHA should fund allowable activities for residents, and that the PHA may use tenant participation funds to improve resident capacity in establishing and operating a resident council. Now, Ron will talk about the PHA's role.
Thank you very much, Ed, and thank you, Virginia. Housing Authority obviously has a role, and the role is in partnership with the resident council. The first thing we have to understand is that the funds go to the Housing Authority. A HUD, out of its operating budget, funds the Housing Authority, and from the operating funds that the Housing Authority receives, they use that money to fund tenant participation. So that's the first thing. They have to and they should collaborate with the resident councils on how to distribute those funds. We say $15 and $10, but then there's a drill down from that. How do you actually use the money? And we're hoping that the housing authorities and the resident councils talk to one another. In that vein, we think it's really important that a housing authority and a resident council enter into a written agreement on tenant participation fund use. I've been at HUD almost 20 years, and the issue of resident councils and how the funds can be used and are they getting the funds is like a constant strain. So a written agreement really helps reduce that tension. The Housing Authority should also advise the resident councils on keeping proper documentation. They may use the funds to provide technical assistance and training to build the resident council capacity, or even to help establish the resident council, and also maintain records of tenant participation funds and uses and provide this information to the resident council. In addition, it's important that the Housing Authority establish policies, one, that follow HUD and PHA rules, i.e. 2013-21, have appropriate financial controls, including a budget, that they follow the procurement rules and insurance requirements, and very importantly, outline a procedure for requesting and providing a written explanation for denied requests. This should be in the written agreement so that everyone is very clear what is allowable, what's not allowable, and the notion of providing explanations for denied requests is in that written agreement. And the Housing Authority also, of course, should meet the other agreements in that written agreement. Requirements, yes? Mixed income communities. When the first notice on tenant participation funds came out, really there weren't a lot of mixed income communities around. But now, through Hope 6, through Choice Neighborhoods, there's a lot of mixed income communities where public housing residents are living next door to market rate residents, affordable housing residents. So how do you use tenant participation funds when tenant participation funds are supposed to flow to the advantage of public housing residents and not market rate residents? So we recommend that the tenant participation funds be used in appropriate proportion to the number of public housing residents in that community. So, for example, we'll take a community, it's a mixed income community, there's 100 residents there, 40 of them are public housing residents, and 60 of them are market rate or affordable residents, but they're not public housing residents. So in that instance, 40% of the tenant participation funds that would be going, say, to a computer lab or to an after-school program can be used specifically for public housing residents, and the rest of those funds would have to come from some other entity, but tenant participation funds could not be used for that. It's important, obviously, that the housing authority or the management firm raise money so that those other sources of funds can come in. You do not want to be in a situation where 40% of the funds are going to public housing residents and the rest of the community doesn't receive anything. So it's important that the management firm, the housing authority, and everyone come together to raise money for those activities. But again, the tenant participation funds can only be used for public housing residents in those mixed income communities. Virginia?
I'd also like to point out here that PHAs that are serving these mixed income communities must also adopt policies regarding TP fund use in these communities, just like we expect those that serve only public housing residents. And now Ed will talk about allowable uses for tenant participation funds.
Thank you, Virginia. Notice 2013-21 provides a long list of eligible tenant participation fund uses. And while that list doesn't include everything that you could spend tenant participation funds on, it should help you and your PHA think about the kinds of things that tenant participation funds can be used for. This list includes consultation and outreach that supports interaction between residents and the PHA, resident surveys, and other means of gathering resident input, annual membership events or site-based activities that improve resident participation, activities that inform residents on issues affecting their homes and communities, and resident council elections and organizations. We should note that a lot of PHAs use their $10 portion of the tenant participation fund to administer these elections. The next slide shows that tenant participation funds can also be used for a variety of planning activities, including planning for the 5-year PHA plan and the annual PHA plan, planning for revitalization, safety and security, property management and maintenance, and planning for capital improvements. Notice 2113 lists providing stipends to volunteer resident council officers as an eligible use of tenant participation funds, and Section 964 actually encourages that. The planning functions and stipend costs that I just mentioned are usually covered by PHAs and not by the resident councils. Now I'm going to jump ahead one item on the slide for just a second and talk about resident training. Notice 2013-21 makes it clear that training can be provided to resident councils, resident advisory boards, or RABs, resident management corporations, and to orient new and existing residents. Section 964 lists as eligible uses of tenant participation funds resident training on community organizing, board development, leadership development, as well as training on public housing policies, programs, and residents' rights and responsibilities. Jumping back now, reasonable refreshment and light snack costs that are associated with eligible activities can also be paid for by tenant participation funds. For example, cookies and coffee could be provided at a monthly meeting. But a full meal and dessert, let's say for a holiday party, could not be paid for with tenant participation funds. Now, HUD's not saying that you couldn't have a holiday party with a full meal and a dessert, but resident councils cannot use their tenant participation funds to do this. They'd have to come up with some other funds to meet those kinds of expenses. Moving on to the next slide, tenant participation funds may be used for a variety of training purposes, such as training for social services, such as parent involvement, childhood development, and parenting skills, and training on health, nutrition, and safety. Tenant participation funds can also be used for a variety of support programs, such as youth education and sports programs, including tutoring, senior programs, job training programs, drug use and violence prevention programs, and financial literacy and housing credit counseling programs. Again, this list should only be thought of as a guide for the various ways in which tenant participation funds can be used. Residents and PHAs should discuss this list and decide for themselves what kind of expenses make the most sense in their communities. Now, I had the fun job of telling you some of the ways in which you could use tenant participation funds. Virginia will now talk to you about the ways in which tenant participation funds cannot be used.
Thanks, Ed. So tenant participation funds cannot be used to fund activities prohibited by laws related to fair housing and non-discrimination. There's also a document published by the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, Circular 887, which prohibits the use of all federal funds for certain purposes. And I want to stress that this circular from OMB applies to all federal funds across the government, not just HUD. So some of the things it prohibits is for the purchase of alcoholic beverages, entertainment, where the purpose falls solely under the categories of amusement, such as trips to theme parks or county fairs, diversions, trips to movie theaters, going to see sporting events, social activities like having bowling nights or parties, express, holiday parties type like that, that are solely for the purpose of amusement. Any costs directly associated to the events in the categories above that I just listed, and any tickets, buying tickets to any types of those things, meals, lodging, rentals, gratuities, transportation to and from these events. And the circular also prohibits any federal funds being used for organized fundraising costs, including financial campaigns, soliciting gifts, and similar expenses incurred to these types of expenses or to raising capital or to obtaining these kinds of contributions. An example of this would be if your resident council was planning a trip for the graduating seniors in development to an amusement park and was soliciting contributions to fund this kind of trip. The TP funds couldn't be used to fund the trip, nor could they be used to fundraise for this kind of trip. But this, again, as Ed was saying, it's not that we're saying that these types of events shouldn't happen at your development. It's just that these tenant participation funds cannot be used in planning those sorts of events. And we encourage PHAs to work with resident councils to find other funds to fund these type of activities that are still great things for communities, but we just can't use these funds for those kinds of purposes. Now Ron will talk about how we can evaluate TP fund use.
Thank you, Virginia. So housing authorities and resident councils do have to come together and look at, okay, tenant participation funds, how are we going to use them, and how do we evaluate whether this activity is a good activity to fund? So the first question is clearly, is the requested activity consistent with the intent of the HUD regulations and the PHA policies? And we've already kind of gone through that. The Public Housing Authority may have some additional policies that they may want to put in. Is the activity consistent with the written agreement between the resident council and the housing authority? And that's why that written agreement is so important to have. It's a document that, okay, I know the document, I know what's allowable, I know what's not allowable, both sides talk about it, both sides agree. And then when you evaluate whether or not to use tenant participation funds, it's clear, it's right there in the document. Does the proposed use abide by procurement policies? Now, a lot of tenant participation funds are not going to be procured because they're not big ticket items. But to the extent that anything does have to be procured, housing authorities have procurement policies that have to be abided by. So we have to make sure that they abide by those procurement policies. And is the request reasonable considering the public housing authority size, the residents served, and the amount of tenant participation funds available? So if there are 100 residents and 15 times 100 is $1,500, but you want to do something that costs $2,000, that might not work. But you need to sit down with the housing authority and you need to evaluate whether this works, this activity works, given the scale of the number of residents we have and the number of residents that it will serve. So the last one, in terms of evaluating, is are the needs of the residents, like those in the housing authority plan, being met by the proposed tenant participation activity? And here you might have an example where you have 200 people and 3 people want to do something with those funds, but nobody else in the development really wants to do that. So you really have to sit down and say, okay, this activity, it's a good activity, but really does it serve a lot of people in the public housing development? So those are ways that we think you should evaluate how those tenant participation funds are being used.
And now we'll have Ed talk about a few more ways, questions to consider.
Yeah, some other questions that you consider are, is the cost of the proposed use of our tenant participation funds reasonable? Are there more affordable alternatives? Is the proposed activity going to take place locally? And if not, is there a good reason for it to take place somewhere else? Is your request clear? Be very specific about the activity that you're proposing to use tenant participation funds for. Will residents have an equal or broad access to this resource? Will an individual or a larger group actually benefit? And finally, will the resident council be able to provide receipts and invoices?
Thanks, Ed. So now we're going to talk about some examples to hopefully make these criteria a little bit clearer. So our first example is about an annual school supply giveaway to students. Ron, what do you think about this example?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that is something that in any development you want to participate. You want your kids, your children to have those things that they need to go to school. I'm saying that yes, that is an allowable use of tenant participation funds.
Yeah, and we would agree that it's meeting a need of the community. It's serving, a large amount of people, and it's something that we would encourage TP funds to be used for. Our next example is resident council members traveling to an in-state resident leadership conference. Ed, do you have some thoughts on this example?
Yeah, I think that should be an allowable use for 3 reasons. One, it seems like a fairly broad number of residents could take advantage of this opportunity. It seems like it'd also be a reasonable cost because it's in-state, and it would provide resident training. So yes, I think it should be allowable.
Great. Our third example is a senior citizen group at a public housing development is planning a weekend trip to a casino. Ed?
Well, unfortunately, I think that's probably not going to be allowable. While it might be fun, it's not an appropriate use of tenant participation funds because it's strictly are primarily for entertainment purposes. There are probably better ways in which to try to engage senior citizens, for example, helping residents navigate through Medicare or Social Security related issues, providing them with computer training, or to adopt a grandparent program with local schools, things like that.
Thanks, Ed. Our fourth example is resident council leaders want to travel to an out-of-state conference. Ron, what do you think about this example?
I think that this is a very, very tricky one, and I think there's not a clear yes or no answer because technically funds can be used to travel to an out-of-state conference, but the question you have to ask is, how much is it going to cost, right? A lot of times if you have 4 resident leaders traveling to a conference across the country, you're looking at all of your tenant participation funds being eaten up by that travel so that nobody else gets benefit from the funds. So you really have to sit down within your development to talk through whether or not this is an appropriate use of the funds, talk to the housing authority, have a discussion, and then also find out, are there other sources of funds that can be used so that you don't use all of your tenant participation funds to have 3 or 4 resident leaders going to a conference out of state?
Yeah. And I think that this fourth example also helps clarify that there's a lot of TP fund uses that resident councils are going to think of that may or might not be allowed. And it requires a discussion with their PHA and figuring out what makes sense for the local community. Something that makes sense in a small rural setting might not make sense in a large urban setting. So PHAs and resident councils need to be aware of what makes sense in their specific communities, and we're really encouraging local communities to figure out what makes sense for them. Now we'll talk about resolving disputes, which is one of the things we hear about a lot at headquarters. The regs outline pretty much what should happen if there's a dispute between a PHA and a resident council group on how to use tenant participation funds. The first things that residents and resident council should do is try to resolve these disputes with their PHA. If for some reason they can't do that, the reg at 964-150A3 states that the issue can be referred to the field office. And you can find contact information to your local field office. Your PHA should know it, but if you can't get it through them, you can also go to the HUD website, and they have plenty of contact information for local HUD field offices across the country. The field office will investigate the matter and try to set up further negotiations between the PHA and the resident council. If the parties can't come to a resolution within 90 days, then the field office determines whether or not it needs to be referred over to headquarters for resolution. And we do hear these things coming to headquarters, and we do work with field offices and resident councils and PHAs locally to try to figure out solutions where there's long-term disputes. One thing that I would like to point out is that sometimes we get policy issues that are coming to headquarters, but HUD cannot overturn a PHA policy if it's consistent with HUD rules. So we'll usually get an inquiry, review it and see if it's consistent with any program rules, HUD rules, PHA rules, rules that we've set out in this notice. And if there's something that isn't inconsistent, but it's just something that, the resident council disagrees on with the PHA, then it's also something that we refer back to the local level to be resolved there. And now we'll have a few examples of resolving disputes, the same way we talked about the TP fund examples. So the first example is a PHA and a resident group disagree on what reasonable refreshment and snacks cost, which is also something that we hear a lot about here. Ron, do you have some thoughts on this one?
I do have some thoughts, and I have some thoughts because, as I said, I've worked at HUD for almost 20 years, and you'd be surprised how many times this question's come up, right? The resident group wants to have a dinner, and the dinner costs this, or they want to honor a resident council person, and it costs this, right? This is why, we've given the general guideline, reasonable refreshment and snack costs. We've given that as a guideline. When the Housing Authority and the Resident Council sit down to draft their written agreement, they should have that in mind, and they should really work out the details. To have someone call me to make the determination, you really should be sitting down yourselves and deciding what it's going to be, where the limits are, what the ballpark looks like. Don't come to HUD headquarters. If you can't resolve it, you can discuss it with your local field office. But I would really encourage the housing authorities to work this out and work it out beforehand before it becomes an issue.
Thanks, Ron. I think that was really helpful. In the second example, we have a resident group disputes how the tenant participation funds are distributed across properties and has already discussed this with the PHA. This is something that we see in large PHAs where there's some system set up that works across the PHA. Ed, do you have some thoughts on this one?
Yeah, well, it sounds like this is an ongoing dispute that doesn't seem to have any resolution at the time. And so following the guidance of the Notice 2013-21 and the HUD regulations, the suggestion is that if you can't come up with a resolution, then take it to your field office. And the field office will urge you to continue trying to resolve the issue, maybe providing a little help to help get you towards a resolution. But if after about 90 days there's no resolution, then the field office will kick it up to HUD headquarters for them to seek a final solution.
Right.
Thanks. So I'd like to thank Ed and Ron for joining me today, and thanks for all their help in putting this together. If you have more questions on this topic, you can read PIH Notice 2013-21, and it's on the HUD website. You can find it under the recent PIH notices under the resources section. You can talk to your PHA staff, which is something that we've encouraged throughout this presentation and in the notice. And you can also contact your local HUD field office staff. And as I said earlier, you can find the contact information on the HUD website at www.hud.gov/local offices. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.